Bharatvarsha have forgotten the Buddha. They have forgotten who or what a Buddha is. They have forgotten his teachings. And they have forgotten the 1,500 years of history of Buddhism in the Indian subcontinent. And this includes Nepal as well. The majority of you here are from Nepal. When Indians say Lumbini, Buddha was born in India, the Nepalese people rise and shout and create a hue and cry. But that's about all they know about the Buddha, that he was born in Lumbini. This is a very sad situation, considering the fact that 75% of the Indian subcontinent until the 11th, 12th century was Buddhist. And therefore, 75-80% of Brahmins and Kshatris who call themselves Vedic from ancient time were Buddhists. But the history has been lost. The history has vanished. And there are all sorts of strange stories about Buddhas running around among Hindus especially. They have forgotten what he taught. So today we will go into a little bit of this. First of all, who or what is a Buddha? In the Indian subcontinent, 90%, 80% are Hindus now, and they think either a Buddha is an incarnation of Vishnu, an avatar of Vishnu, because Puranas written in the 15th or 16th century have written it so. But if you go back to the Buddhist texts, the collection of the words of the Buddha himself, the Buddha has clearly said, I am not a Deva. Drona, the Brahmana, Drona in his time had asked him, are you a Deva? And he said, no, I am not a Deva. Are you a Yaksha? And he said, no, I am not a Yaksha. Are you a Gandharva? He said, no, I am not a Gandharva. Then he asked him, are you a Manushya, human? And he said, no, I am not a human. And the Drona, the Brahman, asked him, then who or what are you? And the Buddha replied, Buddhehi dharehi mam. Call me the Buddha. And what is a Buddha? That is what I mean. The people of the Indian subcontinent, even Nepalese people, who pride in saying the Buddha was born in Lumbini, have not even an inkling of what a Buddha is. A Buddha is somebody that has reached the acme of spiritual height in every sense of the word. Many kalpas ago, in fact, 3 immeasurable kalpa called 3 asankhya kalpa, Bhiksu Sumedha, who was already a highly developed yogi, who had miraculous powers, went in front of Kashyap Buddha and made his intention clear that he wanted to be a Buddha like Kashyap Buddha. This is a tradition, a system in the Buddhist system. Every Buddha makes this intention in front of a Buddha. And for 3 asankhya kalpa, 3 immeasurable period, kalpas. Asankhya means 60 zeros. 60 zeros is 1 asankhya. And 3 asankhya kalpa, Bhiksu Sumedha, who was already a great yogi, who could fly in the air and had all sorts of miraculous powers, practiced and practiced and practiced, developing all his qualities and eliminating all his defilements. Until after 3 asankhya kalpa, asankhya meaning immeasurable, kalpa, not year, kalpa. 1 kalpa has thousands and thousands of years. He became a Buddha. And when he was born, according to Sanskrit literature, Lalita Vista, he was the eldest in Tridhatu. Tridhatu is the Buddhist language technical word for Tribhuvan as is used in Hinduism. He was the eldest. No gods or goddesses were senior to him when he was born. This is something those who call Buddha Dev do not know. Those who think Buddha is amongst one of the Devas like Krishna or Rama, or Vishnu or Shiva, do not know that he was born many times as Indra, many times as Brahma in his process of developing himself. So that is what a Buddha is. At birth, when he is born, he is already the senior-most in all the three dhatu. No gods and goddesses are senior to him. Even the Newars who are supposed to be Buddhists have forgotten this. And they think he is among one of the Devas. In the Majjhima Nikaya, in the Theravada text, he is sometimes called Devadi Dev, but not Deva, as the Indians call him Buddha Dev. This is completely wrong. It is a total misunderstanding of the word Buddha. A Buddha is somebody amongst all sentient beings, which includes Devas, Devis and Devatas, gods and goddesses, who has achieved complete development of all his qualities and complete elimination of all defilements, all emotional defilements. And this is something you need to understand. So, in reality, no Devi Devatas come anywhere near the Buddha. They will have to take another 3 Asankhya Kalpa to become like him. Whether it is Shiva or Vishnu or Ram or Krishna, it's the same thing. They are Devas. Who are Devas? Those who are in the Devaloka, in the realm of Devaloka. When some of you here accumulate a lot of merit, do good works all your life, you will be born in what is called in Nepali Swarga, that is Devaloka. In Devaloka, you are a Devata, no different from Krishna or Ram or anybody. They are just Devas born in that realm. This is again something most people in the Indian subcontinent have forgotten. And they become lost in the idea that these Devi Devatas are eternal, they are always up there, and somehow we human beings. But of course it's illogical, because within the Hindu system, if you are a good man and you do good work, you will go to heaven, Devalok. We are in Manushya Lok, so we are Manav. If you are in Devalok, you are a Deva. How is that different from Krishna, Ram and so on? And so this is what the people of the Indian subcontinent have forgotten. A long history. It is amazing, because Buddhism reigned in the Indian subcontinent for 1500 years. And in the 11th, 12th century, it was destroyed. We will come to that, how it happened. But after the Buddha, Buddhism began to increase all over India. Even in the time of the Buddha, many kings had become Buddhists already. Of many Janapads. There were 16 Janapads in India at the time of, in the Indian subcontinent at the time of the Buddha, and many kings of Janapads like Kosal and so on, Kausambi and so on, had become Buddhists, having taken refuge with the Buddha himself. After the Buddha, Buddhism spread. It spread like wildfire, and it is interesting, unlike other religious systems, it did not spread around the world at the hands of the sword. It spread at the power of the Dharma. That was the Buddha's word. Come and see for yourself what I am teaching is true or not. He never commanded saying, I am the truth, and what I say is the truth, and you believe it. And because of that, it spread through Afghanistan and Iran and Central Asia to China first, around 200 BC. That was the first big civilization where Buddhism spread outside the Indian subcontinent. And as I said, 75% of the Indian subcontinent was Buddhist. Today, 75% of the temples in the Indian subcontinent and Nepal that are used by Hindus were originally Buddhist. This is something that people have forgotten. But when you look at the iconography, you can see that they are Buddhist iconography, people who know Buddhism. For example, the 24 Peethas of Bhadrayogini, the power spots of Bhadrayogini, have become the 24 power spot of Sati. This was converted later because Buddhism collapsed. And it spread in the time of King Ashok, his son Mahindra, in Pali is Mahinda, was an Arath, and he went to Sri Lanka. And that is how it went to Sri Lanka, the Theravada tradition, which is written in the Pali language. And he was an Arath, and it's very interesting. When he went to Sri Lanka, he went to a forest and waited for the king. He knew the king was hunting. And when the king came by, he was standing on a rock and he called him by the name. He didn't call him king or so and so, just like Ramlal. And the king was surprised. Who dares call me like this? But Mahinda was undisturbed. And Mahinda, king went in front of him and asked him, who are you? And he said, I am an Arath. I am the disciple of the Buddha. Meaning 200 years, 300 years afterwards. And I am the son of King Ashok. And the king was very impressed by him, and the king converted. And Sri Lanka became Buddhist gradually. From Sri Lanka, it went to Thailand, Burma, Cambodia, Laos, these countries. Whereas from Afghanistan, through Afghanistan, into Central Asia, it went into China, and from China, it went to Japan, Korea, Vietnam, these other countries. By the time of 11th century, 12th century, there was a Buddhist colony in Alexandria, near Cairo in Egypt. Alexandria was the Greek colony. Parts of Iran were Buddhist. Afghanistan was completely Buddhist. As we know, Gandhar, the famous statue of Gandhar, which was destroyed by the Taliban. Two great masters, Vasubandhu and Asanga, were Brahmins, were from Gandhar. And in the Mahabharata, you find the word Gandhari, the wife of the king. And Gandhari means she came from Gandhar. So Gandhar, Afghanistan was part of the Indian subcontinent, and it was Buddhist in ancient time. And 75% of the Indian subcontinent was Buddhist, including Nepal. And later on, around the 11th, 12th century, the Muslims invaded India. And unfortunately, in the process, they targeted all the monastic houses of the Indian subcontinent, like Nalanda, Vikramashil, Odantapuri, Sompuri, and so on. They thought, this is written in the diary of the commander who attacked these places, Bakhtiyar Khilji. He thought these were army quarters, and the monks with the same dress were army men. So he attacked these places and burned them down. To understand the extent of destruction that happened, you can take the example of what Bakhtiyar Khilji himself wrote of Nalanda alone. And remember, Nalanda is just one of them. There were many all over the Indian subcontinent. He said they brought out all the textbooks out of the library, out on the ground, and started burning them. When a pile of paper starts burning, it becomes red cinders, reddish. And he wrote that it took 6 months for the redness to finish off and 9 months for the smoke to finish. You can imagine the extent of destruction that happened in the Indian subcontinent at that time. There were waves of Muslims coming in and controlling parts of India and destroying. They also killed many Hindu Brahmins. Ghori has his record where he says, Muhammad Ghori has written that Brahmins were brought from the villages and told, they were asked, will you be a Muslim or we'll kill you? And some became Muslims, some said, I don't want to become Muslim. And they were cut off and their string, zanai, was taken out and thrown into the cart. And it says 64 cart full of zanai was thrown into the ocean. But Hinduism never had centers where the entire knowledge, everything is accumulated. And so it was impossible for the Muslims to go every single village and kill all the Brahmins. But Buddhism always had centers like Nalanda, Vikramashil, Odantapuri, Sompuri, and all these different, and even in Nepal, there are many Bihars, even till now, existing till now. So it was easy for them to attack, to destroy, and to kill all the masters. And because of that, Buddhism is not a faith-based religion. It uses faith, but it is not faith-based. You do not just believe it. You have to understand it. You have to study it. As Buddha himself said, Shrutamai, you listen, or nowadays you read. Then Chintamai, you think about it, analyze it to see whether it is true or not. Then Bhavanamai, you meditate on it. And since there were no more teachers to explain the fine points of Buddhism in the Indian subcontinent, it gradually collapsed and merged into with what was happening in the Indian culture, Indian subcontinent, with Jainism, Buddha, Hinduism, different cultures. Many anthropologists say that 75% of what is called Hinduism today is derived from Buddhism. So this is a short synopsis, a short history of the history of Buddhism in the Indian subcontinent. But you have to remember that it was reigning in India, ruling India for 1,500 years. But it collapsed in 300 or 400 years because there were no teachers anymore. Fortunately, masters from the Indian subcontinent, including Nepal, had taken it to foreign countries. Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia. Masters have taken it to Tibet, had taken it to China. So Buddhism continued to remain there. And fortunately, to some extent, the Muslims never managed to invade Nepal completely. And so Buddhism, what is called the Newar Buddhism today, managed to survive. But the Bhaktiar Khilji entered Kathmandu Valley also. It is fortunate for the Nepalese culture, Nepalese people, that it was in the midwinter and it was extremely cold. Kathmandu was very cold when I was young. Now because of the global warming, the coldness has decreased a lot. But when I was young, it was extremely cold. I remember that. So the 1100, it must have been very cold. So the army of Bhaktiar Khilji could not remain there. In 2 days, they went back. They said this place is too cold. So luckily, they went back. But while they were there in Kathmandu Valley, they broke. You see the statue of Mahakala, the nose is broken. And many stupas, many statues, and many Shiva lingas were thrown out. But they did not remain there. So this is the short history of Buddhism in the Indian subcontinent. And because of that, the people of the Indian subcontinent have forgotten what a Buddha is. They do not know what a Buddha is. They think he's amongst somebody like Acharya or equal to some Deva. But as I've already said, within Buddhism, a Buddha is not a Deva. And it is his own words to Drona the Brahman that I am not a Deva. So he cannot be an avatar of Vishnu. As written in Shiva Puran and Skanda Puran, which was written in 15th century, much later. Also, through the 1500 years, Hinduism, Buddhism and Jainism continuously debated with each other. They continuously debated with each other. And because of that, the debate system, the dialectics, the logic, the Praman, as it is called in Sanskrit, became very refined. One of the greatest figure in the Indian subcontinent for logic is Dharmakirti. He is a Buddhist. But again, the Indian subcontinent has forgotten him. Fortunately, there is still extant Sanskrit texts of his writings, the Pramana Bhartika. Like this, there are still extant Sanskrit texts of Mahayana existing in the Indian subcontinent, from which we can know what Buddhism was in the Indian subcontinent. But of course, they were all translated into Tibetan, into Chinese, into Thai, into Burmese, and so they continue to exist. There was a very beautiful poem by Iqbal, the Urdu poet. I don't remember the verses, but it sounds very beautiful in Urdu, when he said that the teaching of the Buddha has vanished from his land, but the light of Buddha burns on in foreign lands. And this is the case of Buddhism in the Indian subcontinent. Today it has spread to even America, Europe, and many other countries which did not have Buddhism at the time when 75% of Asia was Buddhist. When it went to China, it had to debate with Taoists and Confucianists, but gradually it took over majority of Chinese people. And even till today, although China is a communist country, the Chinese people are not all communists. They are Buddhists. And they have great faith in Buddhism. But unfortunately, the Nepalese and Indians have no faith in the Buddha, because they have forgotten him. They do not even know what a Buddha is or who a Buddha is. And they, at the most, take him as equal to some of the gods who are not enlightened, who are not liberated themselves, because they haven't done any practice to become liberated. But somehow, in the confusion, people think Devi Devtas are liberated automatically because they are more powerful than humans. But in Buddhism, that is not considered as correct. Devi Devtas are just pranis, sattvas. That is the exact Sanskrit Buddhist word. Prani, sattvas, and like humans. And sometimes human yogis are higher than Devi Devtas. And this is found in the Vedic shlokas themselves. In the Vidyadhara Upanishad, Madhukanda, it says very clearly that these gods and goddesses do not want human beings to be free, mukta, because they are like slaves, like herds, cow herds, goat herds of them. And if a cow herd or goat herd lost even one sheep, if a shepherd lost even one sheep, he would be very sad. A human being is equal to a whole herd of sheep. If one human becomes free, liberated, mukta, he becomes free from the Devi Devta. So these Devi Devta do not want humans to have knowledge of liberation. But although this is written in the Vidyadhara Upanishad, which is an integral part of Veda itself, today, unfortunately, 90% of the Indian subcontinent worship those gods and goddesses, as if they will liberate them. But this is found in the Vedas themselves. Somehow, through the centuries, Hinduism lost contact with these Vedic teachings, and it became more Hare Ram, Krishna Krishna, Ram Ram, Shiva Shiva, these kind of things. Buddhism, right from the beginning, was clear about these types of things. In the Indian subcontinent, there were two streams of spirituality. The Brahman stream, which is Vedic, not Hinduism, Vedic, the four Vedas. And I'm talking about the time of the Buddha. And the Shraman stream. The Shramans existed and were as old as the Vedas, if not older. Probably, according to a lot of historians, the Vedic stream came into the Indian subcontinent through the Indus Valley. The Shraman stream always existed in the Indian subcontinent. And Shiva is a deity of the Shraman stream. Vishnu is a deity of the Shraman stream. Buddha himself called himself Mahasravana. Mahavir, the Jain founder, called himself a Shramana. This history also has been forgotten. Nowadays, we hear Brahmins in India and Nepal thinking that everything came out of the Vedas. And in Buddhism, Jainism came out of the Vedas. They were branches of the Vedas. They were Shramans, not Vedic. So they did not come out of the Vedas. There was interaction in 1500 years between the Vedic system and Buddhism, by the Jain system and Buddhism, Jain system and Vedic system. There were interaction. It was because of the interaction of Shramans with the Vedic system that Vedanta developed. And you can see it in the story of Gargi, in the Vidyadhara Upanishad, where Yagyavalkya challenges all the Brahmins to ask him questions, because the king Jaivali had offered a whole herd of cows to whoever won the debate, whoever defeated everybody else. He asked a lot of Brahmins, and the Brahmins asked the same type of question. It is all related to Yajna and Havan, sacrificial fire. Then Gargi comes, and Nepal does not tire of calling Gargi our daughter, but they know nothing about Gargi. When Gargi asks Yajna the question, it is a completely different style from the rest of the Brahmins. And she puts a jamba tree on the ground as a challenge, and that was the Shraman style. But this history is lost, and people don't even know what that means in the Indian subcontinent. So Buddha studied with the Shraman masters, and then he also had been practicing for 3 Asankhya Kalpa, and he became enlightened long before he reached Bodh Gaya. From the birth to Bodh Gaya is a lila, a play, a display. Every Buddha goes through this. Like the next Buddha, Maitreya, is in Tushita heaven, waiting for Sakyamuni Buddha's teachings to vanish. There is a saying, 2 lions don't stay in the same forest. As long as Sakyamuni Buddha's teachings, which is called Sasan, Sakyamuni Sasan, remains, Maitreya will not come down. When Sakyamuni Sasan completely vanishes, it will vanish. Completely vanishes, then Maitreya, who is called Swetaketu, who also took 3 Asankhya Kalpa to practice, is waiting there. And when it vanishes, all the gods and goddesses, Devas, Indra, Brahma, all will go up to Swetaketu, like they did to Bhiksu Sumeg when he was in Tushita, and request him, please come down and teach. Because the dharma has vanished. Then they choose parent, they enter the mother's womb. By the time of the when they enter the mother's womb, the seed of the tree under which they will practice will sprout. When he enters the mother womb, there is a slight earthquake. When he is born, there is a slight earthquake. When he attains enlightenment in the Bodhi tree, there is a slight earthquake. and when he attains parinirvana, there is an earthquake. This does not happen to any Devi Devta. You all know the story of Krishna, Rama, Vishnu, whoever. This has never happened. This is what a Buddha is. And he is not equal to any Devi Devta. He is beyond any Devi Devta.